thank you for that always intelligent response to my work. It's a deep pleasure and a little bit, for me, of a surprise. Not because of you, but because of me. Throughout your writing life, you never know whether anyone will understand or pick up on your work. You just do the best you can. For many years, no one paid attention to my work at all. This is no longer the case. But you don't forget those years. I can't tell you how much your intelligent appreciation of my work means to me and encourages me. I recently received an email from my friend, the poet, Andreas Weiland. He's 76 years old, a little younger than I am. Andreas is bilingual in German and English, and he lives in Germany, where there have been a considerable amount of flooding and some deaths. He writes, "We are okay. Many are not. Quite a few died and others are missing. Extreme weather is here to stay as a recurrent possibility. Drought, water resources dwindling, forests dying. We had that not long ago, though not as bad as the situation in the Central Valley of California, where farmers get no rain and winter rain doesn't work when the wells are empty. We had completely unknown extreme speeds of wind this year in a part of Germany. 3 times the usual maximum speed. Global warming is no fun. I hope you're okay in Oakland. I wish so much that future generations will still find a planet that is habitable. What do we do about a world in which this is true? Build rocket ships so that we can inhabit and then destroy another planet? A poem came to me, partly in French. La sottise américaine is having its way. Sottise. A sottise is a short satirical play common in 15th and 16th century France. The word comes from the sot, fools, who appear as characters in the play. In these plays, the fools make observations and exchange thoughts on contemporary events and individuals. Their comments are what make up la sottise. Compare the English word, besotted. La sottise américaine is having its way. How can we change things? How can we speak to people who have their minds made up and will not listen? The answer is that they believe in, they are listening to a story, just as we are listening to a story. You don't change people's opinions. You change their stories. The opinions are the products of the stories. That is the only way that anything like the real can make itself known. The reason my opinions differed from those of my parents was that, quite unintentionally, I listened to stories different from theirs. By the time my parents figured this out, if they figured it out, it was too late. For them, their stories were not stories. They were reality. For me, too, the stories I heard seemed to be reasonable, compassionate, real enough. It was post-World War II. The stories I heard were all about the equality of man, a term which at that time included women. The Nazis, our enemy, were all about the inequality of man. Yuval Noah Harari argues in *Sapiens*, an interesting book, that the imagination is an evolutionary tool. In the 19th century, what the poet William Blake called the dark satanic mills, the world of the Industrial Revolution, had achieved such strength that a poet like Wordsworth had to experience the imagination as an apocalyptic event. It comes upon him, just taking him over. It's not something he can just use your imagination, make something up. No, it comes to him, stopping him. He's not moving in the way that he usually moves. You can find this in the prelude, Wordsworth's film. For us, there are various modes, including science, in which we can discover hope. One of the strongest of these is the power of story, imagination. Even in its debased forms, story has immense power. Let me tell you a story about the wickedness of man. Let me tell you a story about man's compassion and hope. Everyone is a storyteller. It is part of what the birth of language instilled in us. It is the task of the most passionate of storytellers, the artist, to open the real, if only for a moment, and allow us to see the magic at the heart of life, to see that life is openness and possibility. It was the task of those dark satanic mills to close life. Not I, wrote D.H. Lawrence, but the wind that blows through. Jack Kerouac wrote, you don't have to be a Catholic to experience the Holy Ghost. This is a little poem. Sophia, you perhaps know the name Sophia means wisdom. And you perhaps are familiar with what happened to St. Paul on the road to Damascus when a voice cried out to him, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? And he suddenly was blind and fell. He had no idea what happened to him. And he changed. He had been a great persecutor of Christians. He became Christian. Lady Sophia moves among the shadows. You long for her to be your lover. Lady Sophia whispers to you, half awakened, so you're not certain whether it is a dream speaking or she. Like the death goddess in Cocteau's Orpheus, she tells you things you never knew, but then pours Lethe's waters into your thirsting mouth. She has a friend who is even more shadowy than she, who lives in a large echoing house. The friend is beautiful, but mute. Her hands make incomprehensible signs. I saw them both, these women, on the terrible road to Damascus, just before I heard a voice asking a question I could not answer. Everything changed then. New story. I have a longish poem here. I don't want to take up too much time, and I'm not going to read this. It's about myself. It's called Bio. I'll read you a little bit of it. I was formed by what in America is called the golden age of old radio, and by black and white movies we now call noir, the French word for black. I realized I adored the Beatles, Dylan, the Stones, etc. in the 1960s. But now it's Berlin, Porter, Weill, Gershwin that stay with me, to say nothing of the great Charles Ives. I'm haunted by the song Lost in the Stars, Weill's great song about the absence of God, a companion to Lennon's atheist anthem, Imagine. I have learned much from many. I've known some famous people, though a famous poet is like an obscure person in another art. I've enjoyed some fame myself. I claim to have been formed by my early Catholicism, but wonder whether that is a self-serving myth fueling my all too likely narcissism. I had a mother and a father whom I have discussed at length in my work. I have a son whom I love and who loves me. We discuss our various arts, poetry, and history together. At 81, I stand on a sort of precipice. The angry sea is below me. A deep valley is behind. The wind is in my hair, much of which has abandoned me as I age. I have a sense of portent. I wish I knew the meaning of this dream, but I awaken from it happy. This is a lie. I've never had a dream about the sea in the night. This is nothing but the sweet folly of self-reflection, the fiction of what we call living in the world. For a writer, words are a world, though they are not the only world in the world. I weep when I read the arc of another's life. And this is another different kind of poem. That one had a lot of biographical information in it, more than I gave you. And this is a totally fictional, imagined piece, though it's deeply indebted to a writer you may know of, the American Raymond Chandler, one of the great sources of what we call noir. He wrote The Big Sleep, among many other books. Very fine writer. And I'm parodying some of what he did in this poem. It's called Noir. She stared at me the way an empty tin can stares at a cooked peach. She was wearing black panties and no bra. She said no to me in Chinese. I didn't understand Chinese. If she had any more curves, she would have been an illegal pitch. She said, "How long have you been around?" I said, "Long enough to know trouble when I see it." And I see it. She said, "Trouble. How do you spell that?" I said, T-H-A-T. The revolver was still hot in her hand. Her husband lay dead at her feet. "I didn't do it," she said. I believed it. "How long had your husband been in a wheelchair?" I inquired. "Since a few hours after our wedding night." "He couldn't move anymore?" "He didn't move then." She said, "My name's Virtue." I said, "I knew your sister, Prudence." She said, "How many times a week?" She said, "I usually take a book to bed, but when I don't have a book, I have to make do with what I've got. You like red pajamas?" She said, "You want to know how to make a film noir? Turn off the lights." Long pause. I turned off the lights. When she took off her clothes, she was a violent red bird with a beak of gold. We can tell the truth of our lives. We can make things up. All these things are activities of the imagination. It's one of the great tasks, one might say missions, of Litterateur RW, to rouse the imagination in every respect. That is the way in which we can redefine the world. Let the imagination show us new possibilities on every level. Let it light up a world in which all people are brothers and sisters. I am honored to be a part of this wonderful effort. Only the imagination is real, wrote William Carlos Williams. I've declared it. Time for that end. Again, thank you for this deep honor. I am, what can I say, delighted.